All right, welcome to today's coffee chat. For anyone who doesn't know me and is new here, I'm Vennessa McConkey. I'm a certified functional medicine nutritionist, and I'm your autoimmune and chronic disease consultant, where I focus on educating and empowering you to take control of those in-between moments of your life and your health. So as we're finishing up my pillar series that relates to my program, last week we did a double episode. So if you didn't get to watch it, go back, check it out. It's up on YouTube. But this week we are talking about stress. And I saved this one for last in my programs and I talk to you guys because I know I said last week was a hefty one, but this week's one is really, really important, okay? Specifically, I want to talk about adrenal fatigue. What does that mean anyways? It's been thrown around over the last couple of years, right? Well, many people believe that adrenal fatigue, that's an actual diagnosis. It ain't, y'all, okay? But before we dive into that, I want to first talk about how the adrenals work before, like I said, we get into that hot topic when it comes to feeling tired and stressed out. All right, so let's get ready. The adrenals, they're triangular shaped glands that sit on top of each kidney, and they're responsible for the motherload of hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, okay? Commonly, they're known as fight or flight hormones, and they protect us in great times of stress. Okay, so here's the thing. The bodies, they actually naturally are hardwired to protect itself against assaults. And if it sees a perceived threat, let's say a big, huge, burly bear, it will release cortisol and adrenaline to signal the body to switch into that survival mode. Basically, it helps us run faster, right, and protect ourselves, all right? Very important set of hormones, okay? Now, I don't know about you, but that was a survival instinct of running away from bears thousands of years ago, right? Lions and tigers and bears, oh my, let's run. But it's not so helpful in today's world of constant stressors such as emails, traffic, the daily grind of motherhood and marriage and all that stuff, okay? So when our body received a modern threat, when it receives one right now, like a deadline, maybe a family emergency, the adrenals first release a sister hormone to cortisol called adrenaline. And that's that quick jolt of energy for the short term. You know, like when your heart is like palpitating and you got heavy breathing, or like when your kids wake you up in the middle of the night and you're like, oh, right? Then the adrenals have a cortisol that's released for a longer and more significant response to the threat. Now, once that danger or threat is gone, like the deadline's been handled or the family emergency has been resolved, your cortisol level should decrease. And other body reactions like that heart palpitation should start to calm down, okay? That's how our body was designed. The problem is when those adrenal glands get overloaded. It's very, very common in today's stressful world. Anyone hear me on that one? Too much consistent stress, it messes with your system, period, okay? Take it from someone who's on the go all the time. So what can we do? Well, we need to identify the major stressors in our life and figure out a healthier way to handle them, okay? But we're going to discuss those tips later. Now, while cortisol is best known as the stress hormone, guess what? It also hosts other functions like helping the body better utilize carbs, fats, and proteins. And did you also know it helps decrease inflammation, it keeps blood pressure stable, it normalizes our sleep cycles. Whoa, here's another thing. It also helps body manage its glycemic control, which is its ability to metabolize carbs efficiently so we don't experience these peaks and valleys in our blood sugar levels. So when our cortisol's out of whack, guess what? Fatigue is a huge problem. Makes sense, right? So there really isn't a doubt that if you're a high achiever, like many of you are who are watching and listening to this, you're going to have cortisol issues. Cortisol is often considered this queen bee of hormonal balance, right? There's adrenal hormones that affect a wide variety of functions throughout the body, such as regulating that blood sugar, inflammation, right? And most important, its response to stress. And this is why I always say, don't just get the inflammation tests done, but have a stress adrenal test run as well. And if you have any questions about that, please let me know. I can run those tests for you. I can analyze them for you so you don't have to set an appointment that takes weeks to get into your doctor, okay? So how does this work and how does it look on a normal day? Well, on a normal day, cortisol fluctuations, they're basically referred to as a cortisol curve. It resembles a downward bell curve. So what does that mean? Okay, let's go back to school. Okay, so you wake up and within 30 minutes, your body has its highest cortisol levels, okay, for the day. But then cortisol production, it should gradually decrease, and its lowest points is at bedtime, okay? So this is why if you have a condition or potentially a condition like Addison's disease, you test your adrenals right away when you wake up when it's the highest. So if you're low at that point, there's issues, right? Okay, so when you get stressed out, let's say maybe you had a difficult phone call, crying crazy child, a work deadline, or maybe even all three at once, you make and release more cortisol. So much cortisol can be released that on that highway, we've talked about this highway before, it creates a bottleneck, basically like a traffic jam. When you've got three lanes and they all go whoom, into one, everything slows down, which creates other slowdowns way in the backup, right? So these normal stresses may be taking a toll on your brain actually in midlife, that midlife crisis. Researchers, they've actually seen that poor performance and high cortisol levels are linked. And here's the even worse part. It's even worse for women, okay? Can't find your phone, keys, blame it on cortisol. So if you think about it, if there's a traffic jam anywhere and that traffic is consistent, meaning your stress levels are always high and your body is always making extra cortisol, it causes an imbalance, right? And it affects the rest of the levels of maybe like in your body, progesterone, estrogen, those type of things are other hormones that you need. And it can lead to so many different scenarios. Let's just talk about a couple of them. Now, before we dive in, I want to stop for a moment and tell you why we're talking about this. And we're talking about just cortisol in regards to stress. I have personally, if you guys know my story, dealt with it myself, my father, and my grandmother in regards to Addison's disease and being extremely high performers, okay? Now, I'm not saying that you can't be a high performer in any way. That's how you're designed, okay? But what I am saying is that we have to learn how to manage our stressors in today's world so that our bodies can work together. That's the whole point, is to work together and function efficiently. It's all one big system that works together, not independently, okay? There's gonna be times when things are out of whack. Absolutely, it happens, okay? But if we're in a constant fight mode, we wreak havoc on our body. And today I wanna talk about that havoc that it can wreak on your body, okay? And then in my coaching and training programs, we do go into depth personally on how you can relieve that stress for you and make your body work better together so that you can be all that you were designed to be. That's our point here, okay? All right, so let's first talk about when you have very high levels of cortisol, okay? So high levels of cortisol production and reaction to stress are meant to be in like small, quick bursts, right? That little pop of energy that help us get through urgent hassles, right, of the day, okay? So we want, when I spoke earlier, we want our system to return to a normal state, okay? High levels can go back to a normal state. But today what happens is many of us women, like myself, before I got it under control for the most part, right? We're constantly hitting that alarm button with daily, minute by minute insults to our stress levels, okay? That's the problem. And when there's that constant elevation, our body can't calm down. And when it has it over a long period of time, it causes major upsets throughout our body, okay? And it's actually extremely detrimental to your overall health. It ain't worth it, okay? Trust me. High cortisol imbalance is probably actually the most common of the hormonal imbalances for women in today's manic and chaotically busy world, okay? So what does this look like in a real life scenario? Well, let's take a client of mine right now, and she's in her mid 40s. She's got 3 kids and she's a dentist, okay? She came to see me a few months ago and she's like, I don't know what's going on here. I feel just burnt out. I have a demanding home life. It definitely matched her demanding work life. And she really did feel burned out at both ends. And I could see it in her eyes. I could hear it in her voice. She tried to make some self-improvements. She read articles, gave her advice on increasing her energy, as many of us women do, right? We don't want to ask for help. None of us really do. But so what did she think she needed to do? She's like, I'm going to get up earlier. I'm going to work out, thinking exercise was going to give her more energy. And that was the only time she really could afford to do it. So guess what? She was getting up at 4:30 in the morning, okay? And she would head to a high intensity class 6 days a week, okay? And then on Sundays, instead of resting, and I say this and I laugh because I did this, okay? Instead of resting, just did some weights or form of aerobics at home, Okay, no joke. I was seriously felt like I was talking to myself. Okay, like a little older version of myself here. Okay, now your body really needs the rest. Okay, but then during the work week after her workouts, she'd rush home. Okay, rush home, right? Hopefully there wasn't any traffic half the time. Okay, get her kids off to school, and then her days were, crazy at work. Her evenings were equally as rushed, right? She got out of the office, put dinner on the table, kids to bed, and she finally was able to fall asleep around 11 or 11:30, if she was able to actually fall asleep and stay asleep half the time. She literally gave herself little time for any connection, any mindfulness to herself or loved ones, her spouse. She thought she was making a positive impact, okay? But she was really just so incredibly exhausted, okay? So in our initial consult, we went through her daily routine, and I was like, oh, some things stood out immediately, right? She was raising her cortisol level way too many times throughout the day. It just kept going boom, 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 boom. It wasn't allowed to go down. Okay, those high intensity workouts, they're great because they create hormonal stress, which is typically great for building a stronger body, okay? So if you're doing those, that's fine, but you have to have recovery, okay? So I recommended to her, I said, instead of doing it 6 days a week, knock it down to 2 or 3 days a week, and then allow yourself to sleep in and recover from those high intensity. And then on the other days, take 15 to 20 minutes and do a nature walk outside. So you're still being active, but you're not wiping yourself out. And guess what? I was being intentional with that, because when you're outside in a natural environment, guess what it does? It actually decreases your cortisol. So get outside, y'all, okay? Boom. All right, my job's done. No, so another thing that we did do is, we always talk about food here. We changed her diet. She had a high sugar, high fiber diet. We added in some probiotics to help her gut, and really just, we had her do some intermittent fasting. And guys, listen, within 5 days, and this isn't always typical, okay, but 5 days her energy was up, and within 2 months she lost the weight that she needed. Her cholesterol was lower, and she was sleeping so much better. It's just a couple of simple changes, but when we're in the grind of it, we don't think those things, okay? So you gotta get help from myself or someone else, okay? So what are some signs of high cortisol? How do you know you have it? You're wired but tired. You're feeling distracted. Weight gain is usually in the midsection, that muffin top, right? Skin conditions, you have acne or eczema, sugar cravings, and you bruise easily, okay? Did you also know that high cortisol affects your digestive system? It can cause issues like irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's, those type of things. So get those adrenals in order, okay? And there's also been extensive studies showing that persistent high level of cortisol, it causes abdominal fat, bone loss, muscle loss, and a decrease in sex drive. So basically, it makes us older, fatter, and more depressed. No thank you. Been there. No thank you, okay? So if you're constantly in that state of panic, you're overworked, you're frazzled, maybe you're making too much cortisol, okay? If you're feeding the stress by over-caffeinating, right? This is loaded with caffeine, and you're consuming tons of sugar, omega-6 fats, those are the ones found in fried foods, deli meats, processed snacks like potato chips, even if they're organic, y'all, okay? You're only adding fuel to the fire. Alcohol, that's another one. We all use it to, I shouldn't say we all, but a lot of us use it to reduce the stress, okay? That's how we cope with the stress. Just have a glass or two of wine or a beer, right? Okay? Don't worry, if you love that stuff, there's still room for that occasional glass, but we want to make sure we get your hormones and stress levels under control. Otherwise, you're just fighting your body against each other, okay? Now, if you are drinking more than 1 cup, and 1 cup, y'all, is 8 ounces, then what you're doing is you're pumping out these cortisol cars from your adrenal glands all over the body, going to your brains, your muscles, your blood vessels, and cortisol, it's taking up all the lanes on the highway, and it's blocking things like estrogen and progesterone, like I said earlier. Those things need to get to places that they need to go, okay? Yes, coffee, caffeinated tea, it gives you energy surge, but I just drink it mostly for the taste of it, and I don't have it every day, and I don't have a lot of it, okay? But too much is gonna cause those heart palpitations, your blood pressure to skyrocket, then you're jittery, and then what happens when you introduce a stressor? Then your system goes haywire, right? And then we can't calm down at night, the list goes on and on and on, okay? Then we have low cortisol, and this often gets mislabeled as adrenal fatigue, adrenal burnout, and other misnomers that has just been going across media these years, right? All the things, okay? Now, like elevated cortisol, this can still cause you to feel exhausted and drained. Basically, and I know this from my experience too, it's like a car running on empty. It's actually more common than you think to develop low cortisol after a sustained amount of dealing with high cortisol. Remember I said I was like a go, 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 go person? Well, then my body hit a wall, okay? So low cortisol is when your body is unable to produce enough cortisol, typically because it's been on such an overload for so long, it's tripping a fuse. And those excess demands overload the system, and all of a sudden it can't produce as much. And here's the unfortunate thing, is it is irreversible once you get to that point. Your adrenal glands are shot. So when you have prolonged low cortisol levels, that's an indication of a more serious problem in the pituitary glands or the adrenal glands, and this could be perhaps caused by Addison's disease. That's what I have. So if you notice things like changes in your skin, hyperpigmentation or even darkening, muscle weakness, you have diarrhea, weight loss, dizziness, those are all symptoms of the low cortisol, and they're extremely life-threatening. I've been there, I've had the cat lives, okay? So for those of you who, again, have not been around for a while, I do have Addison's disease, and I would go at high levels of cortisol, and then I crashed, and I was like, why? I'm just still doing all the things. Why do I all of a sudden have not a lot of energy? I would take like weeks off of all this stuff and rest. I still wouldn't have the energy. And I went for a couple years of not being checked out by any kind of medical professional. That, plus my genetic makeup, just gave me just the situation I'm in. Now I have to take medication for life. I'm constantly having to monitor my stress levels so it doesn't cause other issues like hormonal imbalances, okay? So for example, like when I have a stressful event, I have to increase my medication. I have to take extra days of rest. I have to really be cautious of what my actual priorities are, okay? As you guys all should do, whether you have something like Addison's disease or not. And trust me, from my personal experience in dealing with other clients, watching my dad, my grandma who's now passed, you don't want to get to this point, okay? So let's come to the good part. What are the ways that you can reduce the stress, okay? Especially the persistent stress, okay? I highly recommend first taking a look at your daily routine. Like I said, if you're a high achiever, you always want to check things off the list. You want to work out a lot, you want to do all the right things with food, you want to just stop, not stop, right? Do some lower impact workouts. Incorporate more recovery days, like I said my client was doing. Get outside, do some nature walks. Here's something too, if you have kids, play with them. Have some fun, okay? So you can start decreasing your cortisol levels by being outside, okay? Let's say you have a deadline. This is a really good one too. Let's say you have a deadline you have to meet and you're stressing out over it. You're like, oh, there's no way I can get all this done. I challenge you. Break it down in those smaller pieces. Maybe delegate some of those pieces out. Maybe ask for an extension. Guys, many times those deadlines are not hard deadlines, by the way, okay? All you have to do is go to whoever gave you the deadline and say, hey, you know what? Realistically, I've broken it all down. I can't meet this deadline. We can either delegate some things out through someone else who works here, pay, an outsourcing, or I'm gonna need some more time. And here's the thing, I tell this to people all the time, what is the worst they can say? No. Great. Then what you have to do is say, okay, give myself grace, take a deep breath, and what do I have to do, okay? Now, I highly encourage deep breathing throughout the day. Set a timer, put it on your phone and say, hey, you know what? This is when I have to take a deep breath, seriously. Hold it and count to like 4 or 5. And like I tell my kids, blow out, okay? Guys, stress wreaks so much havoc on our body, and things like deep breathing really, really help. And many things that we deal with in our daily routines, this was a shocker when I figured this out, we typically create ourselves, and it's not worth it. Remember, we have the ability to create our own schedule. We can take away or add activities, right? And we also have a choice as to how we're going to respond or react to each situation. And I say respond, and that's a positive thing. Responding is taking that deep breath. Short reactions, that's what causes the frantic breath, right? And stresses our body out. Our body needs oxygen, right? So I hope that gives you guys just a little bit of insight into managing stress and how your body responds to stress. I really encourage you to seek out functional lab testing on your adrenals to see what your current levels are, so you don't go into a stage like myself of Addison's disease or overworked adrenals or other hormone issues, and because I'm here to help you, okay? Other functional medicine doctors are here to help you too. I want you to go ahead and click on the calendar link in the comments, book a free call with me, and I want you to put in the notes stress if you're dealing with this burnout, okay? Guys, you are called for so much more. let's help you keep on designing the best you, okay? We will see you next week.